I'm David Wiebe, a violin maker in Woodstock, New York. We're conducting an interview with one of the stars of the film Behind the Strings, which was produced by Michael Peroff and features the well-known, renowned Shanghai String Quartet. And with us is their violinist Weigang Lee, joining us for a Zoom to talk about the film in conjunction with the Woodstock Film Festival. Michael, I got to see the film. It's very compelling, and I'm just so interested to know what caused you to feel like you wanted to make this film.
Well, that's a very interesting question because, first of all, I was not familiar with classical string chamber music at all. I like classical music in general, and opera, and jazz, and R&B, but it's much broader. But I ran across the quartet. I was introduced to the violinist Weigang Lee, and on a social basis, and we just became friends, and I got to know his family story, and I met his brother Weigang, who's on this interview, and the other two members. And over time, I found some very interesting things that attracted me that I believed was a great documentary film opportunity. The first is four characters that have a very interesting background, and also three of them were Chinese, and one is from New York. And I saw an immediate difference in cultural background and wondered how that would work. But they also had backgrounds. I'm very interested in China as a whole, but their music I became more knowledgeable about their music and saw how beautiful it was. But I was also curious how they made it so beautiful and why they were so famous and performing all over the world. So that kind of attracted me, and then there were other side stories that kept building. And I kept saying, there's a film here, and I put together a team, and we went to them and said, hey, we'd like to do a documentary film about you. So those are the things.
I look forward to asking Weigang what it was like when you approached him, but first I'm just sort of still curious about so we watched the film, and as I understand it, it went over a period of about 2 years. Is that correct?
And more like 4.5, almost 5 years. Actually.
Oh, 4.5. Yeah. Excuse me. I cut that way short. But that's a long time to be involved with a group in a documentary. And I'm interested to hear from you, Michael, as from when you started and as you worked your way through that time, did your focus on the documentary become changed as a result of your participation in it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, when you do a documentary film, you don't have a script or a specific storyline. Yeah. And you have to anticipate that you're going to uncover things or run across things, and you adjust depending on how interesting we think that would be to an audience. So yes, right. We anticipated it. We didn't know what it was going to be, but there were things that happened. For example, we got to know some of the wives who were also classically trained musicians, and they, through our interviews, realized that they had to kind of give up or sideline their performance career in order to take care of the family, because the quartet travels approximately 180 days a year on top of full-time jobs at a university conservatory. So the wives' story became very interesting, and we embraced that. And see, the key thing is we didn't want to do a flat performance film, which is one-dimensional. We want just showing performance. We wanted to do 365-degree view of what it takes and what price a successful quartet pays to be successful, Right. And so that meant lots of other things that we didn't know would exist. But we got a lot of good footage in a number of areas.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that segment of that aspect of the film up, because I found seeing the family back behind the scenes of the film is called Behind the Strings, but then there's the family behind the quartet. And that made the whole film very meaningful in a new way. Following the musicians, of course, was your primary objective, and that was really fascinating. But I thought that added a really warm humanitarian quality to the film that it really broadened the whole experience for me.
Good. That's what we wanted.
Yeah. Weigang, was that, we'll get to a lot of things possibly if we have time, but was that including your wives and the families in the documentary, was that challenging for them? They seemed to do superbly well.
They pretty much didn't want to be in the film, but
Okay. Yeah.
they agreed to. My daughter, I think, was maybe 8 when we started it.
Oh, yeah.
And when we finished it, she was 12 or 13. So I think we maybe used a very short footage of when she was older.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
by then, she thought 5 years ago she was very silly.
Yeah, right.
We didn't, I think the 4 of us, we were really unable to act
Yeah.
in front of the camera because the camera was following us for so many hours. We just acted like they were not there. Basically, I
Yeah.
tried to ignore there were cameras.
So it became sort of normalizing thing. So you just were yourselves, and they were sort of like an additional background hanger-on that you managed to just
The only
behave as
thing
you normally would. Is that
I
right?
was told several times to is not don't look at the camera.
Okay,
So that adds to the ignoring part.
true. Right, yeah. One of the things I found particularly touching and also very interesting was to hear you and others talk about your family growing up in China, and to hear about your parents and to see the drawings. I guess Hong Kong did some of those nice pen and ink drawings of your home. And I meant to look up the name of your friend who's the conductor, which I neglected to do in time for this interview, but the fact that you lived like a floor apart from him. And
Yeah, his name is Yu Long.
yes, oh, right, thank you.
Long
Yes.
or Long Yu, yeah.
Yeah.
And we lived just in the same house, basically. It was a house, probably it was built in 1930s and used to be a French firehouse because it was during the French concession. But one family house, when we grew up, it became a house for 6 families.
Yeah, right.
But those were kind of not an easy time, but still, that was the only childhood I knew. So we were all happy.
Yeah,
We were not complaining at all.
yeah. And you must have had to work extremely hard as a young violinist to, become
Basically, forced by my parents.
right. Yeah. And then when you finally got your chance to go to London, I know it must have been exciting, but must have also been sort of wrenching to leave China and your family and everything behind at the time.
Actually, in the mid-'80s, for Chinese to leave China, go abroad, it was like a very happy adventure. It's nothing like I'm leaving my home.
Oh,
It was a first chance. Not very few people got a chance to go outside China and take a look at the world, especially the Western world. So
Yeah.
that was a privilege, and we worked very hard to get that opportunity.
right.
And to our surprise, we actually won the second prize in that competition, which was to my own recollection, I was totally unprepared for that
Yeah.
prize.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know how bad, how good we had no perspective of our playing at that time.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then when did the quartet start to come together?
1983.
Yeah.
So
And
I
how-
was a junior
So that was
in
like
the
3 years
conservatory. My
after.
brother, sorry?
That was 3 years after you got to London first time?
No, no, no. London was after the quartet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We went for competition as a quartet.
Oh, okay.
About
Right.
16 months after we formed the quartet, we went.
Yes.
We went to
Right.
London.
Yes. And there you were outside of China and sort of gauging yourselves as a quartet in the world of quartet playing, and that must have been remarkable.
We were told not to listen to the other quartets because we were afraid that they would sound so much better, we would just fall apart.
Okay.
But after we won the prize, it was also very lucky that we won the second prize because we were, I think at that time, we were not ready for a full-blown career because we had very few pieces in our repertoire. We actually needed further study.
Yes.
So I always think we were so lucky that it's like God was on our side, gave you encouragement of a second prize. So you will go on, but you still had more chance to study. So we spent then we went to America, spent 2 years in Northern Illinois University with Vermeer Quartet. Shmuel Ashkenazi became our next major mentor.
Yes.
He taught us everything. And then we went to Juilliard, studied with the Juilliard Quartet. And then we learned even further.
Yeah.
So that was our main foundation for the quartets.
Right. Two of America's great quartets.
And we also had a lot of personal connection with Arnold Steinhardt of the Guarneri Quartet.
Oh, yes. Excellent.
So it was really a dream come true because these were my idols, heroes in life. And then we became teacher and student and mentor. Then we became friends and we became colleagues. We played together a lot.
Yes, right. I'm sorry, this is an ill-informed question, but did the quartet ever go to Marlborough for the summer at all, or?
They don't really pay, they don't, there are many quartets were formed there.
Yes.
Since the mid-60s, the Guarneri, the Vermeer, but I went there for 2 years, and so did our cellist, Nick Savaras.
Oh, yes, right.
But we were there as individuals.
Yeah, right. Oh, I see.
Yeah, that is a great festival to participate.
It sure is, yeah. An interesting aspect of the film was hearing about the style of teaching in China and the rigorous demands of the teachers and the lack of approval given to students. And in fact, you spoke to me about that one other time just between us about a circumstance that I encountered. And, I'm interested to know if once you as a quartet established yourselves in the United States, if that mode of teaching became modified somewhat to fit into an American, more of an American traditional way of teaching, or did you maintain that similar Chinese style as various parts of the quartet did your teaching?
Well, I personally pretty strongly preferred a combination. Of course, preferably a good combination of the more strict approach, and also, first of all, in China, you have to call me Professor Li, but in America, most students would call me Weigang, which for me it kind of brings the relationship closer.
Right.
But maybe on some occasion, it's not for the better. But in most occasions, it's better. So I always prefer a combination. The two cultural, you have to take advantage of the difference in the culture instead of always look at the shortcomings.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to learn there is another culture existing. Because once you know there's a second culture that's very different from you, and then you automatically think there is a third one and there's a fourth one. So you become more wide-eyed,
I see.
open to new ideas instead
Yeah.
of just my way or no way.
Yeah. And so with the adaptations that you made to teach in the United States, now that you as a quartet are sort of going back to China and doing a lot of teaching there, do you find that you have become, if you'll forgive the term, Americanized, within the teaching style?
We are, yeah, of course. I mean, I've spent my first 20 years in China and the next 35 years in America.
Right.
So even if I feel inside sort of a Chinese, but actually from all my Chinese friends or family, they think you're an American now.
Yeah.
So
right.
it's very, I think it's a combination again.
Yeah. And have things changed in China as far as the way students learn? And, since you were a student there, have they...
Yeah, well, not only for Chinese, but for the whole world has changed so much in the last 30 years because of the internet.
Right, yeah. What does it feel like to go back to China now as a celebrated quartet, and you guys are sort of classical music rock stars and playing to great acclaim in your home country?
I still feel like a normal human being. It's just we're trained to do music.
Yes.
And we have the opportunity to play on the best stages.
Yes.
In China and still expanding. So contributing to our next generation or the next generation. That's that gives me almost more pleasure than just performing.
Yeah.
Because as Long Yu, he invited us to go back, and he was basically saying, he said, in America, you guys are great, but without you, with you, there's not much difference. And if you start to influence the next generation in China, you can make a major difference. Yeah. And that for me was also the attraction to spend more time to go back there. I mean, of course, we bring the Western music to China, bring the ideas.
Yes.
And also we bring the Chinese music, we play in America. We kind of just like on the side, we became a culture ambassador in a small way. Yeah, not in the major way.
Yeah. Now, as a quartet, do you find yourselves touring as much in the United States? Let's say United States, China, Europe. How does your touring schedule divided up among those things?
Before the pandemic, we did 25 concerts in China, maybe 40 concerts in America, I mean, another 20 in Europe, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, right. Wow, it's a really wonderful film full of heart and reality. And I also found it very meaningful to eavesdrop on things that could easily be referred to as arguments, but they're actually less arguments, as they are extremely fervent, serious, zealous discussions about how the music should come out. When four people put their energy together, the music is so important to musicians. It's like, you really want to do it right. You're doing it in front of a stage. You're there and you have to, boom, there it goes. And all of the preparation and the negotiations that you have to go through to decide on your interpretation and your style of playing was fascinating to watch, and I would have enjoyed more of that, but I realize also it could easily be misinterpreted as strife, and that was really good to see.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. If the four people complementing each other too often, in our quartet, if you compliment somebody too much, and probably the other person thinks something's wrong with you. And on the other hand, if you know, it's like this way is fine, that way is fine, probably the end result is not a great interpretation, because the art has to be so specific and also so technical sometimes.
Yeah.
But beyond technique has to be inspiration and depth, profundity. So those are the things that we have to, and it's impossible for people to feel exactly the same. So we have to discuss, and sometimes we spend too much time on 3 notes.
Right.
But that's how you get to a very high level sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's hard to have compromise all the time.
I thought that was a really good thing about the film, was to see some of that.
Yeah, like Michael Trees, violinist of the Guarneri Quartet, he said in the film High Fidelity about the Guarneri Quartet, he said people don't play string quartet have not the slightest idea what it's like to play in a quartet. I really feel it was true what he said.
Right. I'm glad that showed up in the film. And Michael, it's a tribute to your ideas and your collection of footage to have all of that. And now that you've emerged more or less at the end with a finished product, how do you think your view of it changed from when you started now as you look back on it?
It's, I mean, it hasn't changed a lot, but as I said, as we uncovered rocks, as we went down that road and found new things and some interviews, well, you know, we interviewed many people, more than that was actually shown in the film. But some people would bring in whole new perspectives that we thought added a lot of color to the film and a lot of interesting insights. Yulong, who's the conductor that grew up with the Lee brothers, you know, he was raised in Tandun, talking about music, but also his relationship with the quartet and this new piece. Those were unexpected. We had no idea. I would say, obviously, we're not disappointed in anyone who appeared in the film, and some that didn't make the cut. You know, we just can't get it all in. So that was a very rich experience and added things that we didn't expect or we not familiar with. But I think we had a pretty clear vision from the get-go of what the film should be and where we should be broad and where we should be narrow. We were very fortunate, and I got to give a lot of credit to our editor, Tracy Crane, who did just a wonderful job of really refining that and picking the right slices and marrying them together and creating little mini stories. You know, one example is, and I hope that the audience that goes to the film, they'll see there's a democracy scene talking about, back to the question, does everybody have an equal percentage of the decision in a string quartet of how something's going to be done? So we asked the question, is a string quartet democracy? And when you saw the feedback, and that came across, you know, very rich, and we've always gotten great feedback with that. So, you know, so the short answer is pretty much it came out where we were, but we were able to get such colorful, interesting things from the people we interviewed, and some of the footage we shot that we didn't expect. So that's what happens when you do something for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Michael. I think it's a really beautiful film, and I was really so gratified to be able to enjoy it and listen to you play Weigang, the quartet. It was a special experience.
Well, thank you,
David.
much.
Thank you, David.
It really, if we didn't have the 4 guys that we had,
right?
Even with the other interviews, whatever, the 4 guys, each of them is just this interesting study, and the interaction that we got with them, we think that's what made the film. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Weigang, for being a
Thank
part
you,
of this
thank you,
interview.
thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. All right, talk to you.
Hope to see you soon in person.
Oh, yeah, likewise.